Good afternoon. Hi, Dee Dee. Thanks for hosting me today. My name is Susan Latham, and I'm one of the candidates for the Board of Directors for Hill Country Retreat.
How long have you lived in HCR, and what neighborhood are you in?
I currently live in the Lower Springs, and my husband and I have been here since August of 2018. So just about 6 years, 6.5 years.
Perfect. What committee or committees have you served on? If so, your leadership roles.
Sure. Have been on several different committees and task forces. Can I talk about task forces
Sure.
also? So I started off with what was called the Common Area Transfer Team at the very beginning, that subsequently turned into, it was a team, then it became a subcommittee, and then ultimately it migrated into being what was the Building and Grounds Committee. So I was one of the original members on the Building and Grounds Committee, and I was a secretary to that committee. I also was on a website task force for a couple years, and currently I participate on a training team associated with the Technology Committee, where I do website training. And then I'm also finishing up my first 2-year term on the Finance Committee.
How many committee meetings have you attended?
I would believe the answer to that is way, way too many. So I'm really kind of a meeting junkie. The only one that I don't attend on a regular basis is ArcMod. And I think that just kind of has a different focus for me, but I tend to spend my Tuesdays up here at the resort, which is usually the day of meetings. So in fact, this past Tuesday, 4 meetings. Went from communication to nominating to building and maintenance in common area. So I would say dozens. Short answer.
What boards of directors have you served on, if any?
Not a board of director per se. In my previous life, I worked as a Department of Defense civilian, and it was on many boards there, promotion boards, policy boards, and things, but not a HOA specific board.
Have you participated in any Community Association Institute CAI activities or training?
Yes, this past February, I participated in a day-long training for CAI, which was like an intro to being a board member. So at the time, I was not a board member, I was thinking about running, and so that kind of covered a lot of different topics, with the final module of that conducted by Mr. Cagle, but with the lawyers associated with Cagle Pugh. So that's the only one that I've participated in so far.
Have you read the HCR CC&Rs and bylaws?
Yes, ma'am.
What is required to amend the articles of the HCR CC&Rs?
So a lot of that is board directed, and so on both of those documents there have been amendments to them, several of them. Most recently, once the declarant has left the facility, but it's a chance to make the changes. A lot of times you have to see what changes have been made at the Texas state level, and then that kind of rolls down to us. So it's discussion. Board can do it, but I think it's key to bring the community into those discussions also.
What is required to amend the use restrictions in Exhibit B of the CC&Rs?
I don't know.
Okay. What is required to amend the HCR bylaws?
Same kind of thing. So I think you had said bylaws and CC&Rs before that. So just even board can do it. And I think earlier this year we had an attempt, they made an initial draft of it and then made that available out for comment. So I think that's the key, is bringing the community into the discussions and I know we've used a task force in the past on updating the bylaws and the CC&Rs, but I think having the community be involved is very critical.
What is required to amend the design guidelines?
Wow, I don't know about that. I know design guidelines actually is the only mandatory committee. Well, ArcMod is the only mandatory committee that we have, and that kind of starts at the Texas Property Code and works its way down. So it's mentioned in both the CC&Rs and the bylaws. So I know recently we had to amend certain things because of religious artifacts. I don't know, I think artifacts is not the right term, but religious items at the home. So the Texas state law changed, so then that required us to update the bylaws, to update the design guidelines.
Okay. What funds does the Finance Committee assist the board with managing?
Well, since I'm on the Finance Committee, I think I know that. So we have 3 different streams of money. So we have we bring in our assessments that come in from the community, and then we have several other streams of of revenue, not as much obviously as the assessments, but we have an operating fund, we have a reserve fund, and we have a capital improvement fund.
What investments are permissible for the association funds?
So FDIC insured, absolutely. And that the FDIC part of that is run by our CCMC partners out in Scottsdale. So,
what is the deadline for preparation of the budgets?
well, I know we have to have them ready to go for a calendar year. So it's usually done, they're usually prepared like in a July, August timeframe, and then around the September timeframe is when the board gets involved, and then there's discussion with the community. So I'd say it's more like a fall, autumn type timeframe for getting that done.
Have you read the Texas Property Codes sections 202, 204, 207, or 209?
I've read 209 extensively. The other ones I am not as familiar with.
Texas Property Code 209 lists 15 items that the board must vote on in an open meeting. Please name 3 of those.
Wow. Because I read 209. Let me come back to that one if I can, but otherwise I'm just going to pass on that one. Okay?
Sure. Name 2 items the Texas Property Code 209 allows the boards to consider in executive session.
So that would be financial. So if there's an issue with violations that would cause delinquent payments. So definitely somebody on that side. And then severe violations, and then personnel issues. So if there's a concern about, say, a committee member or a committee chair, they would obviously do that offline in an executive session.
What is a 209 hearing?
So a 209 hearing, I know you hear that and you're like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's authorized under that Texas Property Code, and it allows a resident, or sorry, I shouldn't say resident, I should say homeowner. It allows a homeowner the ability to reclame something. So say they've been charged with a violation of something, and there's a certain amount of time that they have to file for that 209 hearing, and then there's a period of time where evidence is brought by the board or by management, and then there's kind of a back and forth. But there's definitely timelines associated with that.
What is the relationship between the community manager and the members of the board? Specifically, who directs the community manager?
The chairman of the board directs the community manager.
What is the relationship between the board members and the CCMC staff? Specifically, who directs the actions of the staff?
So the actions of the staff are directed by the CCMC manager, and we have to be very careful about directing CCMC staff. So there's a bit of staff. If I've had an issue or concern with one of your staff members, Dee Dee, I would go to my chairman of the board, ask them to talk. It has to be in writing if I have a concern, and it could go to you as a homeowner could do that, but it really needs to go through a chain of command.
Have you ever been fined or sued by the HOA?
No.
Okay. Have you ever brought a lawsuit against the HOA or demanded that the HOA enter arbitration over a claim you made?
No.
What future amenities would you support in HCR?
Wow. I don't know. I think maybe one thing, we have a lot of people that do walking here, and so we have some areas that I know when I was on the Building and Grounds Committee that we talked about in the past about expanding the trail system to connect some of the neighborhoods. Pulte had actually made some plans to do that in what has now become the Domain and Cove neighborhood. And if you look at really old maps, you can find trails that then connected to the bluffs. So I think that is a possibility, engaging and perhaps connecting the reserve neighborhood over to Oasis and places like that. So I think that's as one to look at, and maybe some other things that we could do at Memorial Park that wouldn't cause any hate and discontent amongst the neighbors there. They didn't move there to listen to a pickleball court being there, but are there ways that we could use some of that grass area in there to improve amenities here?
Well, I would like to thank you, Susan, for coming in today, because this concludes your interview.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate your time, Dee Dee.